This is the Simply Love Jesus podcast where we explore life and faith through the lens of one question, which is what does it mean to simply love Jesus? I'm your host, Caleb Davis, and usually my co-host is Aaron Collier, but he is super busy, and this episode is also coming out like 2 days before my last podcast, or a week or something like that. And so Aaron's usually with me. We do an episode once a month. Lately he's been super busy, and it's sad because my soul screams for him and his companionship. So hopefully we'll be with him again. But today we're actually continuing our last episode. Last episode we did an episode at Waffle House. We called it the Wafflecast. You should go and listen to it. And then if you like it, you should go and subscribe. And if you like it even more, you should give us a 5-star rating because #yes. And so we were at Waffle House with a bunch of students who are in a discipleship program that I am in. And today we're going to be continuing that same conversation that we had. But instead we have a different disciple with us, and his name is Griffin Stuart.
Thank you for having me, Caleb. It's a pleasure to be here.
So last episode we had a conversation where I read through. Usually whenever I host a podcast without Aaron, I usually just end up reading through something that I've recently written on my blog, and I kind of give some background commentary to it as I read through it. Last at the Wafflecast, we talked through one of the podcasts. It was called "What is a Disciple?" And so the whole point of the blog is a 3-part blog, and the whole point of it was exploring this idea of discipleship and what does it truly mean to be a disciple, because there's so many churches in the world who either think that just being a disciple is just being a Christian and that's it, which it's not, or they have a different definition of discipleship that just doesn't tap into the potential of Christians, and especially it doesn't tap into the potential of students. And it's so removed from what Jesus potentially considered discipleship. And I say potentially because, you can never just assume for the mind of another human being like 2,000 years ago. But what we do know about Jesus was that he was a Jewish rabbi living in a Jewish world in a first century Jewish culture. And during that time, there were many things that we record in Scripture that Jesus said that were actually not original to Jesus. Things like, "Come, follow me." A disciple, when he is fully learned, will be like his teacher. He records that in the book of Luke. These are things that were actually not uncommon. They were very common. They were a methodology from rabbinical discipleship. So in part 1 of the blog, I kind of bring everyone in to that historical lens of what discipleship was in Jesus' day. And then I'll actually have all these blogs listed in the show notes. Part 2, we kind of took everything in on the lens that we've gotten, and we compared it with some other definitions of how the church today popularly defines discipleship. And we redefined discipleship to say that a disciple is someone whose spiritual walk is being personally mentored by a teacher. So that's what a disciple is, and that means discipleship is the process of having your walk with Christ personally mentored or personally taught by someone. And so in part 3, we walk through what does it take to actually make an effective disciple? What does effective discipleship look like? And so that's when we had a cast at Waffle House, because we took a bunch of our students to Kansas City, and then we had a bunch of the guys who have been through that discipleship process, and I got their commentary on the 3 points of discipleship and how they've seen that replicated to them, what they're processing through. I mean, keep in mind, they're also like high school guys. Some of them are shy guys, so they're not great to think on the spot. But they did a great job. I'm really proud of them, and they were able to kind of articulate the best in the moment as they could, because it was a super last-minute decision, so it wasn't like they could prep or anything. But today we have Mr. Griffin, who he's killing it in the discipleship process, and he's been kind of all in and looking forward to next year when he gets to lead the few, as we call it, the discipleship. He gets to lead that himself, and really looking forward to it. And so I kind of take some special time with Griffin, and I thought we would sit down today and we would go back and talk about the same content, but just get it through the lens of how Griffin's seen it and his perspective and his different journey and whatnot. So that being said, Griffin, what are just some general like if someone were to just ask you, hey, what is the few? What do you learn? Like if someone just asked you a general question, what is typically like, what would you say to them? How would you say how it's affected your life, or just the general, like if someone says, hey, what's the few and what do you learn and stuff like that? What would you tell them?
If I'm trying to tell people the truth, I would probably tell them the few is basically Bible boot camp. It's hard. You learn a lot of stuff, but it's very beneficial. And yeah, it's really fun, and you get out what you put in, but it will change your life. It's been one of the most life-changing things for me personally. You learn a lot of scripture, and you learn how to be stretched, like Caleb says all the time. As Christians, we're like rubber bands, and if we're not being stretched, then we're not being used. And he definitely stretches you a lot, and he gets you comfortable in uncomfortable situations.
What are some examples of ways that you have been stretched? Like, what are ways that you feel like your comfort zone was stretched? Give me a couple examples on that.
We were in the Jordan Creek Mall, and Caleb knows I hate talking to strangers. And of course, we're sitting eating lunch, and he says, okay, I'm going to go sit over there and eat my lunch, and you're going to go over to that table and talk to those guys about Jesus and invite them to church. And that was the most uncomfortable thing for me. And I did it. It didn't really go well, but I am now prepared to do it again. And I just know that since I've been through that situation, I've kind of gotten into the mentality of knowing that a lot of times when I talk to people, it's going to be the last time I ever see them. So why not just try to, this could be bad, but I kind of have this like mentality. Like you said one time, I kind of have this mindset of like, let's change the world today.
Oh yeah. We talk a lot of times about how treat our church as if it's the only church in Iowa. You're like we're the only church. Like that's you have to have that. Obviously, that's not true. There's plenty of amazing churches out there, but we have to come with the mentality that like if they don't hear Jesus, they're never gonna hear Jesus. Like I'm the only person around this person who knows Jesus. Like we're the only church in Iowa. When you have that mentality, it completely changes your perspective and how you're talking to people. You have had a couple of experiences since then that have the few is shaped. Like for example, you had a friend of yours who like messaged you like really late at night asking you about Jesus. You've even like taken like your friends like Philip and his brother, is his brother, right?
Friend.
His friend, okay. And so you've like really like brought them under your wing, and you've been really bold with them. Let's start with the experience of like your friend who like messaged you at like what was like 3 a.m. or something like that.
Yeah, that was a pretty cool God answered my prayer kind of moment. I was praying for this one friend for like 2 weeks, and nothing was happening. I was like, God, what are you doing? And then one night when I went to bed, I woke back up at like 3:30 in the morning for no reason. And then at that exact moment, I had that friend that I was praying for just text me and ask me like, hey, can we talk about God? And we spent the entire morning technically just talking about God, and that was a super cool moment.
What kind of questions did like they have?
They were just like I'm really scared about like where I'm going after I die. Like I want to know like how can I be saved and stuff. So yeah, it was a really good experience.
How have you followed up with that person since then?
That's one of my regrets actually. I kind of went 90% with that conversation, and I didn't finish strong with the 10%. I talked to this friend, gave him a Bible, and then I kind of just left it at that.
Yeah.
And that was a mistake on my part. I mean, at least I planted that seed, kind of, potentially.
Hey, that's what you can do this week.
Yeah.
That's true. Just, hey, I thought I've been thinking about you.
Yeah, that's totally true. But yeah, if I had just gone that extra 10%, I could have. Yeah.
That's cool. And tell me about like your relationship with Philip and like his friend.
So I've got this friend named Philip, and every single day after school for a while, he would ask me if I could give him a ride home so he didn't have to walk. After a couple times of saying no, I was like, oh, okay, what the heck? I'll just do it. And so I was like, yeah, man, whenever you need a ride, just let me know, and I'll take you home. Little did I know that would be every single day. So now every single day I take this guy named Philip home. Super cool dude. I love him to death. And then I started talking to him about God, and I realized the car is a perfect place to talk about God because you have their life in your hand, and they can't leave. So why not talk to them about God? And so that's exactly what I did. I talked to him about God, and it turns out that he was a Christian a long time ago, but then his church got into some scandals and stuff, and all they wanted was the people's money, so his family left, and then he hadn't been to church in years. And so I took him to church, and he loved it, and then I met his friend named James, and James's family isn't Christian, and so I took him to church too, and he loved it as well. And then I really started to get to know Philip and James, and just kind of took them in a way. But yeah, it's been super cool because what started off with me just giving a ride to one guy home from school has now turned into Philip, James, and 3 of Philip's siblings are going up to church camp with me in Michigan, and that's going to be a really cool experience.
That's so cool. And, these are just examples of how this discipleship has helped shaped Griffin. It's helped shaped his readiness to have intentional and deep spiritual conversations. And that's incredible. Like that's something that all of us should be striving for. All of you who are listening, be challenged in the sense that, it's not that hard to have a conversation with someone about Jesus. It's not that difficult to, it can be uncomfortable and it can be stressful because you're tense and you don't want to say something wrong. But every spiritual conversation can start with something as simple as, how can I pray for you? And, we always encourage that a lot, is just asking that question, like, hey, how can I pray for you? How are you doing today? Those are the simplest, easiest things that you can do even today. And talk to your coworker, talk to your neighbor, talk to that kid in your classroom, talk to whoever it is, message that person that you've been thinking about but haven't talked to in a while. Just say, hey, how can I pray for you today? That's just some easy examples of intentional conversations that you can be having today. Let's go ahead and dive into what we're going to be talking about today, and that's just kind of like a little snippet intro, #geekness of whatever. I don't know. My goal is always to just embarrass all of my students on a regular basis.
You do a good job of it.
This dude at Kansas City, you would have hated me.
Why?
I embarrassed the students so much, dude. So much I embarrassed the students. I was every little thing I was doing, someone sees some student sees another student that I think is cute or whatever, and I'm like, yo, what's up, dude? You want to come and get my friend's number, just to embarrass them? Oh, it was beautiful. It was beautiful. It was an amazing experience. So, anyways, today what we're talking about is what is a disciple, and so I'm gonna go ahead. I'll just put that question out to you. We say there's 3 things that discipleship requires. What are those 3 things?
Relational authority, sacrificial commitment, and intentional investment.
Oh man, he remembers. Yeah, intentional investment. You got the order backwards, but you still got it right. Is it? So I'm intentional about everything. You know this. Everything I do, there's a meaning behind it. Even the placement. So there's intentional investment, sacrificial commitment, and relational authority. And so we're going to go through each of those and just kind of talk about them, and yeah, it'll be good. So in the few, where this all comes through the lens of is one question, which is, what does it mean to simply love Jesus? And so it's been about, how long has it been since you've finished the few? It's almost been a year. Yeah, it's almost been a year.
I'm a veteran, dude.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you're gone through phase 1. You're about to finish phase 2, and then you're about to go into phase 3. So it'll be good. So that being said, you've had 3, almost 2 completed phases to process this question. You've processed it in the beginning. You've processed it some more since then. So let me ask you this question now. What does it mean to simply love Jesus?
To simply love Jesus means to live in a way where everything starts and revolves around Jesus.
Boom, done and done. Get it. And so let's flesh it out more, because that's the exact answer. But then you also know, as everyone else says, there's always that more unpacking.
It's simple, but it's so complex.
It's not complex. It's hard. There's a difference. Simple, it's like taking a shower. Is taking a shower a simple decision? Yes, because I have to do it. I have to wake up.
Well, I hope it's not hard for you to take a shower.
Yeah, it shouldn't be. It's a simple, but the decision to take a shower is a simple decision because I have to do it. I don't want to be gross. I don't want to get on my bed feeling nasty. But is it a hard decision at times? Yes, because I love my bed, and it's nice and snuggly and warm, and it's great. But is it a simple decision? Yes. But is it a hard decision? Yes. but I have to do it. So it's
Yes.
a simple decision. It's like Jesus loving us. Was Jesus loving us a simple decision? Yes. Was it a hard decision? Yes, because he had to die.
Yes.
But he did it because it was a simple. He had to do it. And that's what makes it a simple decision. So is loving Jesus simple? Yes. Is loving Jesus hard? Yes.
Yeah.
But it's not complicated, and that's what my big argument is. It's
Yeah.
not complicated. But anyways, going in a little bit more about what goes into simply loving Jesus. Like it's a lifestyle that's an idea that everything should start and revolve around loving Jesus. But what does that do? How does that even start?
For me, I've realized in my life that I have a direct correlation between me loving God and how much I read His Word. And so for me, it always starts off with asking that question, what does it mean to simply love Jesus? And then I remember all these things that Jesus has done for me. I remember where He's brought me out of and the things that He's done in my life. And then that just makes me want to learn more about Him. For example, we're doing that 30-day shred thing where we're reading through the Bible in 30 days. And awful. I've been super busy.
We started really strong.
Yeah. But yeah, then the more I read about Jesus, the more I realize how much He loved people and how much he calls me to love others. When you see Jesus in the Bible loving others, what am I trying to say, dude?
Do you remember what James 4:8 is? I'm trying to remember if that's one of your verses.
Draw near to God,
Yeah.
and He will draw near to
So
you.
if you draw near to God, God draws near to you. What happens in that? If you're drawing near to God, you become more like who?
God.
Okay. And if you become more like God, what changes about you?
You'll have a greater love for people
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, why?
because God loved people and He.
Yeah. Exactly.
I mean, it's like going back to your. Was it your first episode, the Greatest Commandments?
yeah.
The first and second great. No, the first and first B greatest commandment.
Yeah.
The love your God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's or as I say a lot, it's the closer I am to God, the greater my love for people will be.
Yeah.
The closer you are to God, the more that you seek Him, the more that you love Him, the more that you run after Him. The closer you are with your relationship with Him, the greater your love for people will be. And that's because it's kind of like a lot. We're in a coffee shop right now, so I think I'm going to call this episode the Coffeecast.
Yes.
But, so that'll be fun. But it's kind of like a lot like this coffee cup. You know, let's say the liquid, the coffee inside of my cup represents the love of God, and all the coffee lovers said amen. And let's say that the cup represents me, and the higher or lower that the level of coffee that's inside of this cup represents my love for God. So the less coffee that's in here, the less my love for God is. The greater the coffee is in here, the greater the love my God for is. Make sense? So in the same way, it's God's love for us. The coffee, God's love for us influences as it grows, as His love fills up in us, the more we have love for Him. And when it overflows, it spills out onto everything around it. So how I word this is God's love for us influences our love for Him and overflows His love onto the world. And so that's the same way as because it's kind of like it's like a person, you know. If I hang out with a person enough, I start sharing their interests because I start understanding why they love the things that they love, and I start then loving the things that they love. Every time I go to Starbucks, I always get the same drink, which is the straw. It's the pink drink, the strawberry acai refresher with coconut milk.
Dude, that is what my 12-year-old sister does.
Yeah, she does, and it's delicious. Okay, but every time I get it, people are always like, "Why do you get?" I'm like, "It's delicious. You need to try it. It'll change your life. It's a near spiritual experience." But anyways, that is just an example of if someone actually tries it, they'll see why I love it so much. And the same way with Jesus, you know, the more that we love Jesus, the more we'll start to love what He loves, and He loves people. And then we see why He loves people, and then we start to love people the way He loves people. You've experienced that. The more that you've read God's Word, it's changed the way that you've kind of spoken to people and your tone with people and how your attitude towards people in general. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would say for sure. I think that's probably what I was trying to get towards with the direct correlation between me reading God's Word and me loving other people. Because before this year, I really didn't read the Bible a whole bunch. But I've really improved on that this year, and I realized that has really changed my attitude towards other people. Like when Philip first came up to me and he was like, "Hey, can you give me a ride?" I didn't really have any desire to do that, but then as I kept reading more, I was like, okay, like Mark 10:45, for even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve. Like I have no reason to not do this. My readings have kind of proven that people don't care what you know unless they know that you care. That has really changed my attitude towards people, and I've just become a lot more serving, I would say.
People want to know that you care before they want to know what you care about.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's something we talk about all the time in the Few, is that people want to know that you care before they want to know what you care about. So yeah, Simply Love Jesus, it's something we talk about all the time, and it's always affecting and influencing our conversations. And that's the primary thing that we're teaching students in the Few, is understanding and walking through this lifestyle of loving Jesus. And now when you're taking students and you're discipling them, you're teaching them, there's 3 things that you have to know about what it means to effectively disciple students. And the first one is intentional investment. So in your opinion, what does intentional investment mean?
Being available to whoever you are either discipling or being discipled by. I think you do a great job at this. Just with the way that you're always available to us. You know, it doesn't matter if it's 3 a.m. or at noon in the day. Like if we call you, you're gonna pick up.
No, I appreciate that. No, that's a great point. Intentional investment, as you said, it's being available. You know, we even talk about this, and this is why Griffin's going to be the main one who's going to be like championing the he's going to be championing the third phase of the Few. So the Few goes in 4 phases, and that first phase is you're kind of going through it. Second phase is you're watching the teacher teach it, and you're helping them. And then the third phase, you're leading it with the teacher kind of playing a puppet in a sense. Like you're kind of like a puppet, not in like a manipulative way, but like in the sense that like you're going to be moving and doing the stuff, but the teacher's going to kind of help move the strings to help you make it excellent. So that it's kind of like a safety net. And then the fourth phase is ideally you're off in college and you're ready to start taking anyone through this process. And he's in phase 3. And one of the reasons he's easily able to advance to that kind of phase is because there's 4 things that we look for in healthy disciples. It's those who are available, obedient, intentional, and consistent. And Griffin's like perfectly modeled that. There's the amount of times where I'm like, hey, we're going to go do this like right now. He's like, boom, done, let's go.
Yeah, you texted me and you were like, hey, what are you doing on Sunday? I'm like, nothing. You're like, okay, yeah, we're doing a construction project. And I have no idea what we're building, but that'll be fun.
So we're going to go help Freedom for Youth, which is a newer organization, at least in our area, and they help teens with like preparing for the real world. Like they help them with trade jobs and like learning skills for trade jobs, and they help them with school, and kids are struggling with that. They bring the gospel, and they have a new facility that's not even on the map. You just have to know where it's at, and so I have a map to get there, and it's right across the street from Freedom Blood and Coffee. It's really simple, but we're going to go there with Simple Church, Brandon Pruitt, and another church, and we're going to go out there and just help them do construction to finish their building so they can start doing ministry. But yeah, intentional investment is understanding that you as a teacher need to invest in your students. You have to invest in your disciples. And what that looks like is you have to pour yourself out to them. You have to make yourself available to them. You have to be able to teach them. It's all about teaching them everything you know. Because at the end of the day, a teacher, when he is fully trained, will be like, or a disciple, when he is fully trained, will be like his teacher. Jesus says that in the book of Luke. And that's not original to Jesus. That was the goal for first century Israeli discipleship, rabbinic discipleship. You had a rabbi and you had a disciple, and they were to try to become like their teacher. It was the art of imitation. And so your goal is to kind of teach them everything they know, or as they would say back in their day, was their yoke. Kind of like a yolk. I thought they always talked about an egg, and for years and years I thought the yolk, they were talking about an egg. Turns out that's not what it was. Turns out it was actually something to do with like a bowl, and like a bowl has this thing that they pull the cart with, and it's the weight on their shoulders. You know what I'm talking about? There's that wooden beam that's like across their neck, and apparently that's the yoke. And really? I never even knew that, but blew my mind because it makes way more sense now. But anyways, a rabbi's teaching would be called their yoke, and so you would pass that to their students, so the student can teach like you teach, think like you think, do what you do, and all for the purposes of just growing in their relationship with God. It's, hey, I want to know God like this person knows God. It's like a mentorship. We all have mentors, and so most of us have an idea of what discipleship looks like without even knowing it. All of us may have mentors, and if you shouldn't, you should get one. But those mentors are kind of like rabbis or teachers, or because rabbi is just Hebrew for teacher. But and in the same way, intentional investment is like, hey, I'm gonna pour my time into you. I want to see you unleash your hidden potential. I want you to know God and know how amazing He is. So follow me and let me show you what it means to love Jesus. And so, yeah, it's intentionally investing in your people, being intentional with what you're doing, not just spending time with them just to spend time with them, though you should do that because it's good and fun. Intentional investment is when you're spending time with them, you're being intentional about it. You're going with a purpose. I'm having a conversation with you with an end in mind, with a goal in mind. And the more that you intentionally invest in them, the more people are going to realize that, investing in people, it takes time. It takes time out of your day. You have to go out of your way to do it, and that requires sacrifice. And that kind of leads us to our next point, which is sacrificial commitment. See that transition there? It's flawless.
Yeah.
Anyway, so sacrificial commitment. Sacrificial commitment is what it sounds like. It's understanding that you have to commit, and you have to commit sacrificially. That means you have to give up the things that you may want. How far are you willing to go to be closer to God? How much are you willing to give up to know that you would be closer to Jesus? How much are you willing to sacrifice? And that's what you put on the line when it comes to discipleship, because the whole point of discipleship is growing closer to Jesus. It's teaching others to live a lifestyle of loving Jesus. And so in the same way, it's helping others understand that if you want that, you got to sacrifice for it. You got to make sacrifices. Sacrificial commitment. Jesus is never convenient. I preach that all day long. Jesus is never convenient. So, Griffin, how have you seen that displayed in the few, in your own life, even in the current few? How have you seen that has become a challenge in the current few? That's the biggest challenge we've had in this year of the few, is sacrificial commitment. So,
yeah, for sure. I think sacrificial commitment is one of the biggest parts of discipleship, and I've seen it a lot in my life recently, especially with Philip and James, not because they're like a nuisance or anything to me, but because I sacrifice a lot of my time for them, a lot of my sometimes money, and a lot of times my gas. I live in Waukee, and then they live in Urbandale, so every time I take them to church, I have to drive about 15 minutes east, and then about 30 minutes to Westwind, and then about 15 minutes back to their house, and then 15 minutes back to my house. It's a lot of sacrificing of my time, but in the few, I would say that the biggest thing that people have to sacrifice is their schedule. We've kind of had a problem with that recently, but schedule is, if you're going to be in the few, you're going to make time for the few. I had to sacrifice a lot of the things that I wanted to do because, like you said, Jesus is never convenient. When you wake up on a Saturday, what you don't want to do is go to the church at 8 o'clock in the morning and do push-ups and stuff. There are a lot of other things that I would rather be doing, and I kind of had to sacrifice those things in order to go through the few, and it was more than worth it.
Yeah. You had to sacrifice your time, you had to sacrifice your comfort. There are a lot of things you had to sacrifice, and loving Jesus requires commitment, and you have to be able to be willing to sacrifice the things that you want or the things that you would like to do in order to get what you need. And all of us need to be closer to Jesus. But in your process, you also experienced even sacrificing your comfort zone, not just on the things that you do, but the things that are told to you. And that kind of leads us into relational authority, because relational authority is about a couple of things. One, it's the relational piece, but there's also an authoritative piece in there as well. With other students, I'm not necessarily going to speak directly into things in their life, but if you're in the few, I even say this from the get-go, there is no area of your life I'm not allowed to speak into. And you experience that a lot as well. You want to share about that?
Yeah, I think, you're definitely good about relational authority. When I think of relational authority, though, I don't think so much about authority, I have power over you, but I think of it more as like relational like credibility.
Yeah.
Like, you are older than me, you know more than me, you've been through a lot of things that I'm going through, so like you have the authority to help me on this, and like I should listen to what you're saying. And for example, back in January, my girlfriend and I broke up, and apart from all the crying and sobbing and stuff, like, you spoke into my life in that moment, and because you've been there, you have credibility in that area.
Even Carson expressed the same thing. Like, a lot of people, they focus on the relational aspect of it because that's what you experience most of the time. As the teacher, we start understanding where that authority part and that two-hand relational authority comes in, because there's certain things that, like, you guys may not even remember, but we're super intentional. So, like, even just the way that I spoke to you guys was, with a student, they're doing something, they're, whatever, I'm going to try and speak to them with grace and stuff like that. But with you guys, if you're messing up, I was straight up like, you're going to fix this today. Like, get it done. And so, like, for example, yesterday, all right, texted everyone in the morning, and I was like, all right, guys, we're figuring out this last day that we're getting together for the few. You're going to figure it out by the end of the day and go. And that's where that authoritative part comes in. And part of it, the authority part, is the, as you said, it's not a power tyrannical, I'm gonna control you and you're gonna do what I say. It's more about this at the very beginning. It's like, it's permission that is shared between two people, and it's saying, I'm willingly allowing you and giving you authority to speak into my life. That's what it comes down to. It can be difficult at times. One of the disciples, they're experiencing where most of the time when they hear from me, it's me coming down on them because they haven't been meeting those expectations. And it's not that I don't like them or anything like that. I want them to meet what is asked of them so that they can grow, because the less they grow, or the less things that they do, they start missing out on the experiences, and that shapes how their experience overall. And so the hard part is when you come off too authoritatively and then you become the mean guy, versus, not that you want to be the nice guy or the mean guy, but you want to find this balance where people, like you said, they have relational credibility, and you're going to give authority over to that person in their life.
Yeah, with that part when you kind of in a way have to be more authoritative over that person that's not meeting the standards, because one thing I wish I knew before I was going through it was that you honestly, like, I mean this wholeheartedly, you get out what you put in. I think you're doing a great job, Mr. Rabbi.
I appreciate that, man. Well, I think we're about to wrap that up. And any final thoughts for the viewers, listeners, peoples?
So I just want you guys to know that God loves you. I hope you have a good day. Caleb hopes you have a good day. And see you later.
And boom.